via Toronto and Sarnia. Despite traversing continents and experiencing different cultures, the bedrock of our marriage was lived on our Catholic faith. And wherever we lived, the University of the Catholic Faith was a reality, which was very, very reassuring to us. We are cradle Catholics and were the beneficiaries of an excellent academic and religious education given by Catholic religious teaching orders. I was educated by the Sisters of Africa, who, interestingly enough, were all French-Canadian, and that meant nothing to me at that time. I never ever thought we'd be in Canada ever. And I actually met my kindergarten teacher in Sillery, Quebec, after we emigrated here. Cedric was educated by the Irish Christian Brothers. Catechesis for us was done totally in the schools we attended. But the culture, and Father Cristino has explained very well the meaning of the word culture, in our homes was very Catholic. There were strong bonds between the family, the school, and the church in matters of faith. Today, that situation has changed considerably, as Dr. Topping had mentioned, but we believe that the fundamentals remain the same. 58 years ago, when we were married, marriage was not spoken as a vocation. But we did know that it was a commitment for life, for better or for worse. It would involve sacrifice and trust and love, as we had seen in our own homes. Sadly, today, the concept of marriage as a covenant between the couple and God, is not understood. Jesus says in Matthew 6:33, "Without me, you can do nothing." Marriage is seen more as a contract, and a disposable one at that. It is often more about the wedding than the marriage. Later, when the going may get tough, some fight for unity, but many of them just quit and move on. Not a very desirable term, but a very commonly used term. Since we have a priest and a religious sister in our family, people ask us, what did you do to foster these vocations? So we discussed at length of what we did in looking back. First, in respect of their individual freedom, we did not push them to consider a religious vocation, but it was discussed in general. When they did reveal the good news to us, they were pleased that we accepted it, and with great joy and thanksgiving. We had a vision for our family, and the vision was to be a domestic church. So we developed this vision for our family, and simply put is, what do we want our children to be when they are adults? And how did we get there? One was the daily practice of the faith in the family as a strong foundation for adult life. A determined effort to cultivate strong family ties, including the extended family and even other faith-filled Catholics. And because when we were living in Calgary, as we are now, none of our immediate family was anywhere close to us. They were all in Ontario. But they did visit us, and that's when we included them in our practice of the faith. And finally, we insisted on them and ourselves to embrace the culture of excellence. You're hearing the word culture many times today. And finally, what did we do? Now, what we did, I'm going to leave to Cedric, the engineer. Be patient with him. He's a man of logic, structure, and excruciating detail. But the practical aspects of what we did to putting our plan into action, he will deal with. Thank you.
Friends, what an endearing handoff from my dear wife. Funny but true. She is the good wine, and now it's my turn. I do sweat the details. Some of them are just a few words. Please, thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm there for you. It's your mess, clean it up. Show me your marks. ask the altar servers of the chaplaincy about who sweats the details. So I am in good company of the men in black. Actions speak louder than words. Faith is more often caught than taught. What did we hope our children would catch? Dr. Topping, any more frisbees? First was a unified, clear love and respect between Greta and myself, based on our faith. If the children see every day that for Dad, Mom is the most important person, and vice versa, and that this respect for either one will merit swift and harsh consequences, they take notice. So we never strongly disagreed in front of the children, especially in moral matters. And we never allowed the little rascals to play one parent off against the other. Second, a habit of prayer and its associated things. The family that prays together stays together. We said the rosary daily as a family, including, as Greta said, aunts and grandparents and friends who were with us. We dressed up for Sunday Mass. Our children became altar servers and lectors, and we ourselves tried to be active in church ministries. We cooperated in the sacramental preparation with church and school. We made Sunday a day of family time after Mass. Sadly, it's not easy to do that today, and those who try, we salute them greatly. Thirdly, we exposed them to priests and other good Catholic friends whom we invited for meals or visits. These were normal, enjoyable social interactions, not focused on religion. Our children saw them, especially priests, as normal, respected, and loved friends. They still have this attitude today. We did family things together that were fun and often educational. We really enjoyed hiking and camping in the glorious mountains so close to Calgary. In those days, we drove right up to Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, pleasures that are now not available. Some memorable trips done in sometimes the heat of the moment took us to Regina in the heat of the summer. We visited the RCMP headquarters, Wascana Park, and the legislature. We did a long trip to San Diego and back in a station wagon. Remember those? And there were no seat belts. Hallelujah. But in our station wagon, we had Raffi and Curious George and Zamfir and singers whom one could understand. Perhaps our signature feature, family feature, on which visitors have often commented, was long conversations at the brunch and dinner table. Eating together was non-negotiable. Here we discussed current affairs, local, national, and international, school matters, sports, family history, social trends, and occasionally, most importantly, household chores. Everybody was expected to participate, and they did. Matters of ethics and morality and religion came up naturally and were dealt with. A notable one was, who was immaculately conceived? Years later, our daughter Rachel, now in university, decided we should take a Catholic quiz. She came first, Greta came second, and I came third. Charity did not prevail at the time, as others harped on my poor showing. occasional humiliation is part of family life. There has to be joy, fun, and some zaniness in the family. How you do it is your own unique way. In ours, we had bad puns and teasing of Raymond, jokes and pranks, and banging on the door of the one bathroom that we had. Our approach was not exceptional. Many we know followed it in their own way and produced faithful, committed adult children. Look around you. They are here today. Priests, religious brothers and sisters, married and single Catholics, models for us here and now. It is Good Shepherd Sunday. Although he's not here, I want to thank our Chief Shepherd, Bishop McGrattan, and all those who assist him in this demanding ministry. Greta and I pay tribute to their families. I will end with a short family story. When our daughter Marisa was interviewed after being selected as Bishop Carroll's Student of the Year, she said that her role model was my mother, then 70 years old, because she was independent, ahead of her time, while being a good wife and mother. Today, Marisa, now Sister John Mary, is neither ahead of her time, nor independent, nor a mother. Such are the ways of the Holy Spirit, which blows gently where he wills. You and I have a vocation. We are called. We belong. Come, let us follow the Lord generously, for he is never outdone in generosity. Thank you.
We want to thank Cedric and Greta so much again for that beautiful testimony of their family life and how they built a culture of vocations. I cannot stress to you parents enough how important it is to witness to your own children the love of Jesus. I want to give a shout out to my own mom, who is in the crowd somewhere, I won't tell you where she is, who has been an encouragement and has been supportive of my own vocational journey. And so I just want to remind you that the Catechism teaches us that it is the duty of every married person to encourage each of their children in the vocation that is proper to each, with special care to those religious vocations. So do not be afraid if your children choose the path. As Dr. Topping said, it might seem odd to the world, but it is beautiful. And so do not be afraid, children, and do not be afraid, parents, to accept that calling in your children.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, our final speaker before we have our panel this afternoon is two members from the Seeds of the Word community, Brother John Paul and Sister Anna Sophia. The Seeds of the Word are a contemplative and missionary community, and they will explain a bit more about their community and their calls to the religious life. Please welcome them up.
So thank you for having us. I am Brother John Paul, for those of you who don't know me. And a brief word about our community. We are a new community that comes from Brazil originally. I am Canadian, but sister is Brazilian. And we have been in the Diocese of Calgary for almost 10 years now. And as Keelan mentioned, we're both contemplative and missionary, having all the different vocations within our community. And once we were talking with a priest, and he's like, wait, that's not fair. You have the whole church in your community. I was like, well, I never thought about it that way, but it is true. So if you have any more questions, we have our table up there, or you can always see us around Calgary in many different events and parishes throughout the year. So stop us, talk to us. We're pretty normal people for the most part. Sometimes. And we were today asked to talk a little bit about discernment. And so I paraphrase a quote from, I believe, Father Bob Bedard, the founder of the Companions of the Cross. And he says that ever since discernment became mainstream, no one has made a decision. And I think that is maybe not completely true, but very true for today's day and age, especially. And we live in a culture that people don't like to make decisions, don't like to do things, they like to be told what they're supposed to do. But we as Catholics are called to discern. And again, going to the root of what does discern mean, coming from the Latin word discernere, it means to separate, to sift, distinguish, or perceive. And so discernment in and of itself is not making a decision. You make a decision after you discern. But the process of discernment is its own process, where you separate, you sift through, you perceive, and you distinguish. And it's not choosing between good and evil. That's not discernment. That's easy. You choose good. Discernment is choosing between two goods. And that's when it can get tough, because married life is beautiful, but priesthood or religious life or consecrated life is also beautiful. So now comes the hard part of discernment. And so there's two bases that I really want to focus on here with discernment. Again, I don't have enough time to give you a whole talk, nor am I an expert in discernment, but really what it comes down to is trusting in the Lord, and we do that through our relationship with the Lord. If I want to discern, if I want to distinguish, sift through, perceive, if I want to separate the different reasons and the things, I need to have that relationship with the Lord. Discernment is made with the Lord. It's answering his call in my life. It's answering what he wants me to do. It's following where he wants to lead me. It doesn't just have to be our vocation. It can be, am I called to, say, in a job, am I called to be a teacher, or am I called to be an engineer? Am I called to go to university, or am I called to do ministry for a year or 5 or for my life? There's many different decisions we can make, but it all comes from this place of relationship with the Lord. And to grow in my relationship with the Lord, it's all based off of my life of prayer. How do I grow in relationship with a normal human being? By getting to know them, by talking to them, by listening to them, by sharing my life with them and them sharing their life with me. And it seems abstract sometimes with the Lord, but maybe it's just me. It's easier with the Lord. I can just tell him whatever, and he's not going to judge me. But then I also need to listen to him. And if you open up the Bible, it's actually kind of crazy how often you just open the Bible to a random page or to the daily readings, whatever it may be, and the Lord speaks to you. Of course, it makes perfect sense when we think about it, but that's the beauty of our relationship with the Lord. It's a lot easier than our human relationships, and he will never lead us astray. And that's where that trust aspect comes in. I need to trust the Lord. I need to trust that he truly wants what's best for me, and that even if I might be a little bit afraid, if I'm not fully sure of myself, the Lord will lead me, and the Lord will show me the way, whatever it may be. And so in our discernment, this process that leads up to a decision, it's all based off of trust and our relationship with the Lord. And that's why we need to pray. That's why we need to have our own daily prayer times of speaking to the Lord, of going to Mass, of going to Eucharistic adoration, of reading the scriptures so we can hear the Lord's voice in our lives. We have to do all these little things, and it doesn't have to be for 6 hours a day. We don't have to do all of them at the same time. We don't have to do them all in one day. I know we have lives, so sometimes I can't go to Mass and adoration and have another personal prayer time and pray the rosary and do this and that. Okay, but maybe I can go to adoration on Monday and go to Mass on Sunday and another day in the week, but keep that personal prayer time each day so I can share with the Lord my feelings and then allow him to speak into it. And the more we grow in relationship, the more we begin to trust, the more we're open to whatever the Lord has to say to us. And so when we are in this relationship with the Lord and we enter into this process of discernment, that doesn't have to be, I don't have to be discerning all the time, but when I enter into these moments of, okay, is it option A or option B, it will become much more naturally, it'll come much more simply, and the Lord will show us the way. and he will lead us in his path to the fullness and the plenitude of life, to what he has planned for us that will lead us to heaven to become saints. And so I'll now let Sister Anna Sophia share a little bit about testimony, about discernment as well.
Okay, so when Brother John Paul and myself were talking about this moment now, we decided it was good to talk about the relationship, but give a little testimony of what this relationship looks like. And talking briefly about my own testimony, and as we are talking about Catholic culture, we're talking about culture of faith, I want to let you know that I did not grow up in a family that had this Catholic culture within it. But I grew up in Brazil, and 25 years ago, the culture was Catholic. And all that I knew growing up was how to pray Our Father, Hail Mary, and the Glory Be. That's it. Got baptized at 12 years old, not of my own will. My mother went through a conversion at that time, and she decided to baptize her kids. I was 12, and as a good daughter, I said yes. I didn't know what was it about. Received my first communion, having no idea that was Jesus. And this Catholic faith within my family just was not really there. As a result of it, I have two siblings that they were very far away from the church, very far away from God right now. But God, in his mercy, when I was 17 years old, he called me to a relationship with him. So until the point of 17 years old, I did not know how to pray to God. I just knew how to pray to Our Father. If I was scared, I don't know, something is happening, I'm scared. Okay, the only thing that I knew how to do was pray Our Father. I didn't know how to say, God, help me with this, not even this. No relationship with God at all. And to the point of 17 years old, finishing high school, you have to have a decision, you have to move forward with your life. And I had my plan, everything was planned for me. And when I was getting ready to go to university, the normal plan, when you don't really have a relationship with God, you just have one thing in your mind. I'm going to go to university, get a career, be rich, get married, have my kids. And that's my perfect life. So that was planned, and I was moving forward with that. Had already chosen my names, chose the names of my kids even, because I knew that was the path. And moving forward to this direction, there was this great emptiness within me, giving my yes to this plan that I have made. And I did not know what other option was there. I just knew that. Never met any sister in my whole life. There were sisters in my parish, but they were without habits, so I didn't really realize. So I never actually met or considered the religious life or the consecrated life. And at 17 years old, this emptiness came. My friend called me to church. There I met the seeds of the word. There was a retreat, and God called me to the sabbatical year. And the sabbatical year is this 9 months program that we take with the seeds of the word within the community for one thing. If you ask, what is it all about, is one thing: growing in relationship with God. That's it. There are many things within it that will help them to grow in this relationship with God, but it is a very radical step that they get into this growth in relationship. And was there that my relationship with God actually started. And within 3 months of the sabbatical year, I knew the call of God in my life. So this path of relationship, and we can look for it in many different ways. And there are the best ways: adoration, rosary, Bible study, all these things, mass, all these things that you can always go to grow in relationship with the Lord. And sometimes we will be doing all of these things and will not actually hear where God's calling us. And sometimes he calls us to a further step in this relationship. And for me, it was this time of the sabbatical year. mercy, purely God's mercy. I was not thinking about it. I knew that there was something else when God showed me, okay, what am I to do now? But purely God's mercy that came to me and brought me into a relationship with him. And in this path of relationship, God made really clear to me that I was called to be his spouse, that I was called to give my whole life to him forever, until eternity. So I really encourage each one of you today to find ways to grow in relationship with God. And discernment is not about discerning the wrong from the good. This is too easy. We know what is wrong and we know what is right. Discernment is discerning what is good from what is the best. And growing in relationship with God, God will show you what is the best. If I was going to get married, have my kids, be rich, have a great career, it's not bad. It's good. Do you guys agree? It's good. But God showed me something that was the best, completely out of my plans, but was the best. And I'm really happy today for being able to be here today, witnessing and being reached by God's mercy, being able to be his spouse and offer my whole life to him as a witness of his love. So yeah, I think that's it. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Brother John Paul and Sister Anna Sophia. So we will now be moving into a time of panel and Q&A. So I invite our panelists to please come forward. Today we have joining us Brother Michael, Sister Carol, Father Frank, Sister Simon, Sister Azanet, Father Derek, and Peter. So please come and take your seats. Thank you so much. So this panel will be a time of, first of all, us getting to know our panelists briefly, hearing a little bit about their stories, and then we will open it up to a general Q&A. And so panelists, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pass our mics along. Just tell the audience your name, what community you're part of, or what you're discerning, and just a little brief note about that.
Yes, so my name is Sister Carol Foran from the Sisters of the Precious Blood. Our whole name really is Sisters Adorers of the Precious Blood, Daughters of Mary Immaculate, a long name, and we're more known as the Precious Blood Sisters, or the PBs. We are a contemplative monastic community founded in St. Hyacinthe, Quebec, which is it's about 60 kilometers from Montreal, founded by Mother Catherine Aurelia Cowett in 1861. And the way of life that we're called to is one of prayer and community. So both are important. It's a life of adoration, reparation, love, intercessory prayer. We're called to remember all the people of God, in fact, our whole world, excuse me. As we pray daily, we have the many hours of prayer during the day, liturgy of the hours, personal prayer, contemplation, so on. So that gives a little bit of an idea of our type of why we are existing.
Sister, I think you already have a candidate here.
Yes. Well, she's a little bit young, but that's okay. You can come.
Okay.
We are blessed with a few new candidates, and so it's just a couple more years, honey, and we can. So, for my own vocation, I'll just very briefly mention it, that I wasn't really thinking very much of religious life as a young person, but at 16, within about a minute, it sounds amazing, but within about a minute, I came to know the Lord in my life, and I knew Jesus was calling me. And how he called was, you know, what are you going to do with your life? Is it going to be of help to other people? And so I said to him in response, what do you mean? Do you want me to be a sister? And he said, yes. So that's not usual, but it does happen from time to time. But he didn't say where. So for many months I was looking for my call, and in time, after a few months, he let me know where to the community. And I've been professed for almost 64 years now. And so very grateful. There's nowhere else I want to be. And I know that I carry the whole world in my heart and my prayers. And very grateful.
Thank you, sister.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brother Michael Pera. I'm a Franciscan friar, and the Franciscans are rooted in the history and life of St. Francis of Assisi, so over 800 years of our way of life, our spirituality. I minister at Mount St. Francis Retreat Center near Cochrane as part of the retreat team there, and there are 6 Franciscans that live there. Out of the 6 of us that live there, I am the only one who is not ordained a priest, and I find great comfort in that a lot of days. No offense to any of the priests that are here. My vocation as a brother is unique in that way. There are 13 of us across Canada that are not ordained priests, and we fulfill our vocation in the gift of brotherhood, in being that witness of relationship, of what it means to be brother. I was recently asked how I would describe my life if I had to title a book or a movie would be made about me. I said, big brother, little brother, always a brother, is how I would describe my life. I'm the oldest, so to Dr. Topping and his stats, that worked in my favor. And the sense of being brother has always been an important part of my life. I loved being a big brother to my siblings. And in following the life of St. Francis, I love being a little brother. That gift of minority and fraternity is a key part of how I try to minister. My vocation really came out of nowhere. In fact, Victoria Avenue in Regina, there's a Moxie's restaurant, and that's where it all started, believe it or not. I was asked, why aren't you a Franciscan, by someone who wasn't a Franciscan. And that escalated everything very quickly and changed my life. I was ministering as a pastoral assistant in Regina at a large parish and loved everything that I was doing, and yet had to discern between good and best and good and better. And in that moment, I realized that I needed to pay attention to this. My siblings and my parents would say, you have an answer for everything all the time. How did you not come up with something in that moment? I said, I had no words in that moment. I had absolutely nothing to say in that moment. And within that week of that question being asked to me, the reading of Elijah in the cave came up, and I was awestruck by how God was at work in my life. And that led me to the Franciscans. I have been professed since 2015. I made my solemn vows in 2019, and I've been at the Mount ever since then, working in retreat ministry. So that's a little bit about me and us.
Thank you, Brother Michael.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Ann. I am a seminarian studying for the Diocese of Calgary. I study up in Edmonton and at St. Joseph Seminary. And in Edmonton, many things are St. Joseph. So we have the Basilica, the college, and they're all St. Joseph. Then the St. Joseph Seminary is the one 15 minutes away from the university, not the one in the university. There's about 39 seminarians this year, and 13 of those guys are from our diocese. So we make up a third of the diocese, and a great bunch of guys that we get to hang around with. Seminary is a very peculiar place because sometimes the big questions are like, what are some of the concepts that we find in Aristotle that are incompatible with our faith? And then the next moment, the important questions are, what are we playing for sports tonight? Is it hockey or basketball? Or is it formal for Mass today? Is it hot breakfast tomorrow? But it is indeed a place where we get to anchor ourselves into Christ. It is where we can live our life and truly discerning good from best. Is this what God is calling me to do? So the first thought of me thinking about the priesthood was actually after First Communion. I began altar serving, and there was this great moment of intimacy that I had when the priest was consecrating the host. And I got to share in that intimate relationship that my pastor had in that moment. And it was I still can't describe it very well, but it was a feeling that I shared, I think, at that moment with the priest. And then my family and I immigrated to Canada, and I continued altar serving, went through school, and I was very blessed with good Catholic teachers. So a lot of my catechesis came from those good Catholic teachers, as well as the Sunday school in the Korean parish, which I attended. And I hit high school, and now it became time for me to seriously discern whether seminary was where I was going to right after graduating. And I had my now new pastor at St. Anne's, talking to him, going through the interview process, and then at the time, Father Miles Gaffney, who was the vocations director, to interview with him, and Bishop Henry. And everything was very smooth. So I ended up joining the seminary. And in my 5th year, there was a process where things weren't really rolling, where discernment kind of came to a pause. And with the recommendation of the bishop, I ended up taking a year off. And in that year off, it was basically working on things that I was unable to work on at the seminary now, outside of that bubble, living in this world in a very secular way, but in a very secular world, but still trying to maintain everything that I've developed at the seminary in this world. And in the middle of it, I was very successful. I had different jobs, and I started investing. I was like doubling my money. It was crazy. Yeah. But then in November or December, I was sitting in my room praying, God, is the priesthood still what you want from me? And then I guess he got really tired of that question. He asked me, what do you want? I was like, oh, this became very personal. And after a moment of silence, I said, God, I want to do what you want me to do. He said, then you know what you want me to do, so do it. And so I was crying. I called Father Cristino. Father Cristino, I need to book an interview with you again. Will you guys let me back in the seminary? And they said yes. And I went back, had a very good year at the seminary, had a very fruitful internship at St. Luke's Parish in Calgary, and I went back for my final year of studies at St. Joseph's Seminary. And I just finished my finals, but I still have something called a comprehensive exam that'll be at the end of my program. And then I'll have something called a vocational synthesis, whereby I come back to the diocese for another year, kind of like a second internship. So, thank you very
Peter.
much.
Hello. So as I was looking, I'm the only one holding the paper. I wrote my sharing for this afternoon. My vocation journey started with a question as well. What if religious life is for me? It took me 6 years to act on that question because I really wanted to get married. I wanted to get married, and it did not make sense to consider it at that time because both from my father and mother's side, none is in religious life. So I was like, it does not make sense. Like, why would I do that? And I kept asking that question. And I'm not sure if Father Cristino remembers, but I had a few sessions of crying with him, either in the confession Or at that time, I asked him to be my spiritual director at the St. Albert Parish. It was crying. It was just a combination of very poor decision that I was doing in my life. And so at that time, and even at that time, the question would still come up, what if religious life is for me? And I was like, Lord, is this serious? Like, do you know what I'm confessing right now and what I'm talking to my spiritual director? And still this question, I'm still asking this question. It much more, it didn't make sense. And so at that time, Father Cristino helped a lot in terms of what I should be doing as next step. God bless Father Cristino. I followed all his guidance at that time. And it made me a better person and making a wiser decision in my life. But life took me to Vancouver Island after that for work. And I was like, I'm still asking, what if religious life is for me? And I was like, this does not make sense. So I'm gonna be open to date. So I was so excited. Vancouver Island, people. So I was like, but every time there is an opportunity, the more I see religious sisters, in the church, I was like, how come these sisters are coming? Are they coming to the island, like taking the ferry just to come to the island and like be all everywhere in the church? So it really kept coming. And so after over 2 years, I came back to Calgary for school. And I reached out to Father Cristino again. And we met at SAIT. And so again, I cried. God bless really, Father Cristino. I cried. I cried like it was a public place where. So I was like, oh, I felt so sorry for Father Cristino because people might be thinking, what is he doing to her? And so at that time, I kind of summarized, and Father, I don't know if you still remember, but before, I used to see you, blah, 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 blah. And so Father Cristino was like, okay, if you did all those stuff. So at that time, I cried more with his response because to me, it felt like I'm giving you the blessing to pursue religious life. So I cried. I cried some more, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, maybe religious life is not for me, because now I'm ready to pursue it. And the sisters that I've been reaching out to, they're not opening because of COVID. And so I was like, okay, maybe religious life is not for me. So I continued. I finished my program at SAIT. I was hired as a medical office assistant. I continued working. And then one of the Sisters of Providence was invited to give a talk in one of our retreats. Then that started it. And then I finally made the decision really to not just ask the question, but act on it. Like what the previous speakers are saying, like we can't be discerning forever. So I mustered my courage to take the first step of really finding out what if religious life is for me. And then I started my journey with the Sisters of Providence. And Sisters of Providence is an international religious congregation. We don't have brother counterpart or priest counterpart, but we do have Providence associates. So these are men and women who would like to support us, but they're not vowed into the congregation. And I would also like to say something about invitation, because when Father Cristino was sharing earlier that he was invited to do adoration, our foundress, Blessed Emily Gamlin, used to be married. So when her husband and her kids died, the discernment really led her to religious vocation. The bishop at the time refused, said no. So she did ask the bishop, Bishop, can you please pray with me for this intention? And he ended up saying yes because of that invitation. So for all the young women and men here who are considering religious life, I would also invite you, because what if religious life is for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Hello, I'm Father Frank Sharma. In religious life, I'm known as Brother Frank of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And my vocation, I owe to our Blessed Mother. Even my parents, they are both convert Catholics, and my family, because of the intercession of our Blessed Mother. So regarding I'm a Carmelite, Discalced Carmelite priest. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta. And my vocation to the priesthood, I would say, started fairly young. Like, I thought about it. But in my teenage years, I'm from Sri Lanka, and we moved to Canada when I was about 20. And this thought didn't go away of being a priest. Then I entered the seminary as a diocesan seminarian for the Archdiocese of Vancouver. But I always loved Carmel, the spirituality, and Our Lady of Mount Carmel, order dedicated to Our Lady. But I thought religious life will cripple me. I wanted to be free from vows and superiors, all those things. And I thought myself I'm too independent for that. And I wanted to be a diocesan priest. But after a few years there, I left. I was working. And then some religious orders approached me and said, hey, why don't you try us? I was like, no way, I don't want to be religious. And but so many different things came up in my way, pointing towards Carmel. Then finally I said, okay, Lord, I'll try it. But I was very uncomfortable even, approaching the initial stages and everything. And things happened to discourage me. But again, as I said, there's a sense of, no, you need to do this. So what I mean is sometimes we have to go out of our comfort zone. When the Lord calls us, it's not necessarily all easy, of course, we know that. But we have to move away from our comfort zone and enter, and cutting off all the ties at times. But I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to paint. I wanted to sing and to do all those things. But I thought, as a religious, I'm not going to be able to do it. But when I was working, when I had money, I didn't have time. When I had time, I didn't have money. Right? But then finally, after I entered Carmel, the first thing was, okay, you're going to California to do your novitiate. I'm like, wow, okay. And then I finished my novitiate. And I was preparing to go to St. Joseph Seminary for my theological studies. Then I just finished applications that day. And then I got a call saying, you're going to Rome. And I'm like, really? Okay. And so I was there for about 3 years. And then there, because of the necessities, I got opportunities to paint and to conduct the choir and sing. What I'm telling is, I thought religious life will limit me. Saying yes to the Lord will cripple me. But actually, as this gentleman said here, we can never outdo the Lord in generosity. And he gave me much more than I could ever give him. So we can never outdo the Lord in generosity. Even like in my life, I wanted to be settled down by the time I'm 30, but I didn't become a priest till I was 41, just a year and a half ago, pretty much. And I remember when my vocation was interrupted, and then I was wandering around, not knowing what to do, working, and I was thinking, what a waste of time. And what am I doing? Where is the Lord leading me? And even I remember during my novitiate, one lady came and said, "Oh, you are a late vocation." I'm like, okay. Then I thought about it. Then I said, listen, I quoted Gandalf the Grey. I said, my vocation is never late. It came precisely when the Lord wanted it to. Yeah? And then, but the thing is, now that I think back, look back, all that the time that I thought, what am I doing, working, and all that time was part of formation from the Lord. I won't be the same priest without that time wandering, that I thought I'm wandering. I thought I was wandering and wasting time. But that time, that's how the Lord was preparing me. So my dear brothers and sisters, don't be discouraged. If you are wandering, it's okay, as long as you wander with the Lord. You know, hold on to our Blessed Mother, because she will never let us, go astray. Hold on to her, and she will take us to the foot of the cross. Yes, it is difficult, but that's not the end. We know that resurrection is the end. So do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid to say yes to the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father Frank.
Hello, my name is Sister Simon, and I am from Poland. I am Dominican sisters. As Dominicans, we are the preaching order, and traditionally, Dominican sisters who are active sisters teach at schools. However, in my congregation, we engage into preaching either through teaching or various other apostolic works, or the aid to the sufferings, like in healthcare ministry. I am in the congregation for 20 plus years now, and as for my vocation story, apparently I have no recollection of this fact, but apparently when I was 6 years old, I announced to my mother that I am going to be a sister. I do not know where it came from. I am from non-practicing Catholic family. This happens in Poland actually a lot. I know I am like John Paul II generation still in Poland. In my time, everyone was baptized Catholic, unless you were Jehovah's Witness. That was pretty much all the religious diversity we had at the time. But for a lot of families, religious practice was more of a social event. There was no spiritual part to it, and that was the case with my family. So, and I never met any sisters growing up, so I don't know if I've seen something on TV or how I was exposed to the idea of religious sisters. And like I said, I don't recall that announcement made to my family. However, I do remember overhearing accidentally the conversation of my mom with my grandma. My mom told my grandmother about it, and my grandmother told my mom to, if I ever mention this again, to tell me that the sisters sleep in coffins. Well, I didn't know if it's true or not, but because it came from my grandma, who was the only practicing Catholic I knew personally, and if she was, reacting like this, I assumed this is something bad. Apparently, I said something terrible, so I never mentioned this again. And it was not on my mind much either. I was pursuing my own ways. However, when I entered high school, I became friends with the girl from pretty much next door. We became like really close, and she was from very practicing family. When they attended the mass, not only on Sundays, they were praying rosary together. There was a lot of encouragement in her family of practicing the religion. So, not surprisingly, toward the end of high school, she started discerning religious life, and since we did everything together, she started inviting me to come along to various retreats that didn't go very well for me. I did not enjoy meeting the sisters and attending all the religious celebrations and other things, and I thought it was quite strange, but I still followed her because we did everything together, right? Until we met Dominicans. That really didn't go well for me. And I told her I'm just not having this. This was just terrible experience, all this the whole day of prayers and talks, very intellectual and everything together. It was just, I was having really hard time. I was very anxious. I am not an anxious person naturally, so I was very anxious at that retreat, and I told her I'm going home in the middle of the retreat, and so she's like, okay, we go. And we promised to each other that if either one ever, mostly her, becomes a sister, we will not become Dominicans, because they are the worst. Well, I think about 10 years after that, we didn't enter at the same time. We both entered the Dominicans, not at the same time because she was a little older. We both entered right after high school, but she graduated sooner. So we didn't go through our formation years together. But about 10 years after that proclamation, we both made our solemn vows together. So it was truly a blessing to be able to make our solemn vows and just laugh about it, how eventually, we understood that God wanted us to be religious nerds, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with Dominicans. It's all right. Right, brother? Yes, yes. So since I am from Poland, of course, I have to tell you, do not be afraid. Open wide the doors to Christ. Yes, yes. And I hope St. John Paul II is praying for all of us today, as he was a great supporter of all young people and all those discerning vocation. And I hope you are not afraid, because whatever God prepared for you is beautiful and will give you a lot of joy, because you cannot see too many serious faces here, right? Yes, we are people of joy because we found our way and God makes us happy.
Thank you, sister.
Good afternoon. I'm Father Derek Remus. I'm a priest for the Diocese of Calgary. I was ordained in 2018. So I'm a diocesan priest. I'm not a religious priest. I don't belong to a religious order. I'm also what's called a secular priest, so Father Frank is very religious, I'm very secular. A diocesan priest is a priest who's ordained for a particular diocese. So obviously I'm ordained for the Diocese of Calgary. I started thinking seriously about being a priest when I was 12 years old. That was largely due, I think, to the influence of my parish priest. I was born in Blairmore, Alberta, which is in the Crow's Nest Pass, for those who are familiar with where that is. And when I was 3, my family moved to Warner, for those who are familiar with where that is. That's a village. At that time, it was 450 people, close to the Coutts border crossing. The parish priest was actually from Poland. He was on loan here to this diocese, Father Richard Krasinski. He's since returned to Poland. But he, I think, was a profound influence on me. He would actually say to me when I was a kid, you'll probably be a priest one day, or you're going to be a priest. And at first I didn't like the idea because I wanted to be a detective. And then I had a period where I wanted to be the prime minister. And obviously that didn't work out. I was an altar server. That was also, I think, a profound influence on me. My family was practicing Catholic. My mother was a revert to the faith. My father's a convert. And I remember particularly going to Eucharistic adoration as a kid in the town of Milk River on Friday nights. And I think that was really had a big impact on me. When I was 12, I really started to think seriously about being a priest. It sort of just hit me one day that this is probably what God wanted me to do, and that this is how I'm going to be happy. And I attended an ordination that year. There was an ordination of 4 priests for our diocese in McMahon Stadium. That was in 2002. And that had, I think, a profound influence on me as well. So I continued to think and pray about the priesthood throughout high school, junior high and high school. I had a spiritual director who advised me actually not to enter the seminary right after high school. He advised me to get a degree in something that would be beneficial to me as a priest, or if I discerned I didn't have a vocation to be a priest. So I went to a college in California, Thomas Aquinas College. It's a Catholic liberal arts great books college in Santa Paula, California. I spent 4 years there. That also, I think, had an important influence on me spiritually and intellectually. really coming to appreciate the riches and the depths of the Catholic faith. I remember in my last year we were studying what St. Thomas Aquinas had to say about the priesthood of Jesus Christ, and that really, I think, confirmed for me, helped me understand even more just how beautiful and how great